So we want to welcome you to another Coffee and Corona. We took a little break. This is brought to you by Hope Spring Studios and the Happier Zone. We've got our artist in residence, Caroline Patrick. Hello, Caroline.
Hi, PJ. Great to see you again.
Are you coffee or Corona today?
I am coffee today. How about you?
Well, I am Corona. I have my little homemade margarita here. It's a little ginger lime margarita. It's tasty, actually.
I'm drinking my coffee out of my Jamaica mug.
Ugh, I couldn't do that today.
Yaman.
Oh, I love the colors on that.
Yeah.
I couldn't do coffee today. It's 105 degrees. It's definitely margarita or Corona. Yeah. Beer.
You know, they say that if you drink anything other than hot coffee in Tucson year round, that you're not a true Tucsonan.
I don't get it.
So.
Well, I always drink my iced coffee. I hope that's okay.
Case in point.
I guess I'm not a true Tucsoner. Darn it.
Yes. Well, that's just a rumor. We'll probably get
Actually,
lots of calls.
I'm living in the new Wild West.
That's not true.
I'm living in the new Wild West, wild and crazy, drinking my not coffee. Not hot coffee.
Not coffee. Have you tried a cup of not coffee? It's not coffee.
It's in the new Wild West.
Wild West, where we drink not coffee.
We're actually wild.
We're wild.
Anyway.
But we digress. Look, we're already digressing. God. That's why these podcasts get so long, you know?
I know. Well, that's the point of these ones, is to hang out, though, right? We've got our drinks. We've got our topic. We're ready to chill out.
And what's our topic?
Well, let's see. I think you should tell us, because this one was your choice. You asked to talk about this one.
Oh, that's right. About napping?
Yes.
Just kidding. How to take a really good nap.
Being a great
drink
napper.
One of his margaritas.
A great napper. And from what I hear, you are a very great napper.
I am a great napper. Yes, I am. I'm a champion napper. Yes, we are talking today. Champ. Way to go, champ. We're talking today about being great.
I'm curious. I was curious since you requested it, and I didn't ask because I wanted to save it for now, but why you wanted this topic?
Because I think I needed to refresh myself. It was selfish. I wanted to refresh myself on what greatness really means, because, you know, one of the things, even though we've taken a break over the summer, coronavirus hasn't taken a break, and the toll that it's taken on people's anxiety, their sleep, their productivity, how they feel about themselves and others, and will we ever feel quote unquote normal again? I was just thinking that something that could be potentially really uplifting would be to talk about greatness. So that's why I picked it.
Okay, so you kind of you associate greatness with being uplifting.
Yes, I think so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I think of the great, you know, like what's great. We could talk about definitions here for a minute, but yeah, when I think, you know, something that's great typically means something that is outstanding, moving, exponentially special.
That's cool. So in the book, and again, my books are packed away in boxes from moving. So you can imagine I'm holding a book of Are You Happy Now? And we talk about greatness. And in that, I write a little analogy of, hey, you know, you wake up one morning and someone knocks on your doors, this Jeeves looking guy, he's very finely dressed like a butler, and there's a limo behind him, and he tells you to get in, and basically he explains to you that you've been found through your genealogy to be part of royalty, and that your inheritance is ready to be passed on to you. And so they take you to this grand palace, palatial type place, and this wonderful limo, and there's people waiting on you, and just how would that make you feel? And if you realized that you were actually royalty, like how would that change your feeling about yourself inside? And how would that change how you behaved as a person to realize, oh, you know, I have this great heritage that is who I am. And because for me as a kid, that always had an effect. It was like, you know, if that's who I really was, if I was really royalty, I would probably act better. I'd think I'd have a little bit tighter, trying to think of the best word, but I would hold my own self with a little bit better behavior and expectations of kindness or goodness. And so I don't know, maybe I'm crazy or weird for thinking of it that way.
I don't think so. I think you're touching on a point that that, you know, when we think of greatness, and especially as it relates to, you know, humans, in your example, you know, of being of royal birth or lineage, you know, there is a common notion that those, you know, that we aspire to be, you know, we aspire to be like them for whatever reason, and we look to them as role models. That's one of the, you know, that's one of the things that that I think has rightly or, you know, wrongly, you know, can go awry with celebrity. That when you look to celebrities or anybody as like a role model for greatness, you can end up being disappointed because humans are, you know, however great someone may be, you know, based on whether or not, you know, like their successes, their lineage, their whatever, they're still, you know, they're still humans, and have done, you know, have done things, everybody, even, you know, probably, well, I'm not going to use her because Mother Teresa probably never did anything horrible, but but anybody besides Mother Teresa will probably, you know, has done something that wasn't, you know, that they maybe were like, wow, I get, you know, that probably wasn't great.
So they fell off their own pedestals.
Right, right, exactly.
Well, I think that's a good thing to always remember, because I had kind of an experience like that. This is ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous, but mine was Barbra Streisand. And, you know, I was drawn to her as a kid because she was kind of a diva, a singer. Yentl was a thing back when I was little. And when I saw her in another movie, I was raised Mormon, for people who don't know me. And you're not allowed to smoke or drink coffee, so the margaritas here are definitely out. So in her movie, she was smoking a cigarette, and I was just crestfallen. It just tore me up that she was a smoker. Worst thing in the world to be a smoker.
Really?
Yeah, and it's silly, but it's just an example of like, okay, you know what? Everybody's human, and it really doesn't do well to put people on pedestals, but it actually kind of is a interesting segue to what I think of greatness now, since we're talking about definitions, is that to me, my definition of greatness is living up to your potential, to the very best of your ability. And I've been trying to think, ever since you requested this topic, I've been trying to think of, hey, what would I say about greatness that's very interesting? And nothing really interesting popped into mind. And I think what makes it good, though, is that most of us go through life just dealing with life. We're not really thinking of, oh, what am I going to do today that's great? You know, we kind of enter each day with the thought of like, well, what do I got to do? What needs doing? I've got the chores, I've got work, I've got people needing my attention. kind of things that just kind of whittle away at our time and attention and energy. And we get through the end of the day and look back at like, well, what did I do that was great? I was like, well, we didn't become king or queen. We didn't become president. We didn't make $1 million. For very few people, those are the stories at the end of the day. You know, didn't buy a mega yacht, didn't do any of those things. And for me, I kind of think of greatness a lot of times as really just getting to the end of your day, having done your best, and throwing a bit of whatever is you into that day. And so like me, if I make sure that I take some time to practice some new music, that's greatness. If I can manage to not lose my at, you know, people who are annoying, I think that that's some greatness right there. And so I think, you know, you and I, Caroline, we were talking about how it can be the little things that can equate to greatness. And actually that's what you were saying. Did you want to touch on that a little bit again?
Yeah, I think before I do, I was going to pose a question to you. And I have a thought on it myself, but since you were talking about that, you know, that if greatness, that being great, it could be, you know, sort of like what, you know, by the end of the day, you know, what have you been your best, you know, your best self? Have you, you know, done the things that you feel were, you know, significant or important, you know, to you? What's the opposite of that?
The opposite of greatness?
Yes,
That kind
as
of,
you have just defined it.
I would think it would be just letting the day go without living with some intention. Because I think a lot of us who are trying to live a happier life, we learn that we have to live with as much, you know, presence, being present and aware in the moment, and then using that presence of mind to determine what we want the outcome to be. And the opposite of that is just doing whatever comes to mind without really thinking about it, just going through the motions, just living by letting our emotions or knee-jerk reactions or negative feelings take over and decide what we do next for us, without us, you know, living with presence of mind and saying, hey, you know what, this sucks, but to get the best possible outcome, I'm going to do this. You know, I could give into my anger and just go ape on the person, or I could just use some patience and let this person negativity flow past me and keep my integrity. You know, that, you know, even just standing our ground, you know, may not make us the best the arbitrator, mediator in the world, but if we can get through a situation like that without injecting more negativity in the world, I would say that's great.
So do you think you can be unintentionally great?
Yeah, I do. I do, because when I think of that, I go back to like, who are some of the epic tales? The now I'm putting myself on the spot, but you've got like the Aeneid and the Odyssey, and you've got these heroes that don't know they're the hero yet. They're just being thrust into these difficult situations. It's not till after the fact that they realize, oh, I'm so great that I'm the hero, and now there's going to be these epic tales about me for thousands of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know what was happening. They were just rising up to the occasion.
Right.
I mean, what is your thought on it?
Or, you know, even people sort of in modern day culture, like, and this is somebody who I don't know a lot about, but, you know, Lin-Manuel Miranda, who, you know, he's, you know, he created this phenomenon with a musical, you know, the musical Hamilton, And he took a music form that, that a lot of like older people didn't necessarily, understand or appreciate hip hop, and he incorporated it into this, important story about our country's history. And he made this, and just sort of, and I think it was intentional in his part, but I don't think that he or many other people understood that just by taking something from our pop culture and incorporating it into, part of our history, and telling a story that's important to our history in a different way, became this phenomenon, really. And and I think that, that's kind of a, I don't know, and I think, yeah, I would say that's an example of greatness, where, he did want to create something that was significant, but I would be willing to bet that he wouldn't have realized that it would have, taken off and had so much meaning to so many people,
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest things about greatness, because we tend to think of greatness as being noticed, getting lots of people's attention.
Mm-hmm.
That's not greatness. That's getting known. And
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that's great. I lived in Hollywood for a year, and there was a lot of people who were known who were not great people. I would say they were not great people.
Uh-huh.
And I would say there are countless, literally countless great people that we've never heard of and never will,
Mm-hmm.
because they rose to whatever occasion life, threw at them, and we'll just never know or realize what impact they had on the world. And, someone like Johnny Appleseed, for instance, and, I hear a lot of that's fable, right? But
Mm-hmm.
what did he do? He planted seeds. That's not so great, but it's the impact, it's the legacy that it left behind. And even if a lot of it is fabled, I think that there's truth to the fable that we should appreciate nature. We should appreciate what nature does. All these apples can grow out of one seed. Orchards can come from one seed. And the moral of the story is what I always got as a kid, is that greatness comes from the little thing. That, greatness is that little seed that you plant, and it becomes orchards and flowers and fruits for people to enjoy from the one little thing that we do.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was thinking about as I was preparing for this, is the small, I think you had said it, you helped me think about it, that even, being kind, which is something that I feel is very important in this, in this world, that, how did you say that small acts of kindness?
You're the one who said it.
Well, you finessed it though. Small.
You were saying that small acts of kindness add up to a life of greatness.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that is, yeah. And I think, I think we're starting to touch on something that I feel is important about greatness, which is, that it doesn't have to be tangible to be great. And, but it does take an awareness.
Yeah, I think people try to get noticed because they're seeking validation, but that's an outer thing. Getting validated and noticed by other people, this is an outer source of what we would call happiness. And anybody who understands happiness knows that happiness is an inside job. You'll never find happiness coming from the outside, and not true lasting happiness. That happiness has to come from within. And so even if you're doing those small acts of kindness, like you're holding the door for someone, or helping someone with their groceries, carry their groceries, help an old lady cross the street, those are cliche examples.
Right.
But in the happiness hangouts, what's the thing that comes up every single meeting is, oh, I was going through the checkout, right?
Yep.
You know how many checkers' lives have been just how many or days have been turned around by somebody who bothered to treat them like a human being?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that that's the seed of greatness right there being planted. Just that little conversation of, hey, I'm going to treat you like a human being, not just someone to check my groceries. And I think it matters. I think it really, really matters that we do those little things. And whether you're doing something that humanizes somebody through an interaction with them, or you do something nobody will ever see, like planting an apple seed or picking up a piece of garbage and throwing it in the trash.
So what if, let's say you work for some company, and this company is that it's going to remove all the plastic from the ocean. Okay. So you, PJ, you're working for the company. You figure out the secret for removing plastic from the ocean, whatever it is. I don't know if it's a machine, if it's a chemical, if it's a big vacuum. I don't know what it is, but you are the person that figures it out. So you go to your boss and you're like, I have this great idea. I think it's going to work. And your boss is like, oh my God, that's perfect. That's what we need. That is truly a great idea. And so you're like, oh my God, that's so, thank you for, let's do this. And so your boss invites everybody together and the press and, all of that. And then your boss says, I have come up with this great idea that's going to clean the oceans. And they end up taking the credit and getting all of the fame and glory and all of that stuff. It doesn't take away from the fact that that is a great idea and that is a great thing that happened, but how does that make you, the idea person, feel?
Man, that is a multi-layered question. I mean, well, okay. The question is, how would that make me feel? That would make me feel, I would feel crappy on one hand, because nobody likes to be taken advantage of. Nobody likes to, this isn't being thrown under the bus, but nobody likes to have that kind of a thing happen to them. And it's absolutely normal and healthy to feel crappy about that. And then you're faced with a tough choice that makes it feel even crappier, is that, hey, do I go after the boss and try to throw him under the bus or take him to task so that people understand he is lying? Or do I just rejoice in the fact that, hey, this was a great idea? And the fact that this person...
you were great, you're still great for coming up with it, but you don't get any of the credit.
Yeah. And that becomes the question that's tough about that is, what's my purpose? If I'm going to keep integrity with myself in this situation, is my best integrity to bring that boss down, or is it to just let this idea go because it's doing what I wanted it to do, which is to get out there and get the plastic out of the oceans? And I've had those types of things happen. I mean, have you had that kind of situation happen to you?
Not specifically that kind of situation. I have been a part of teams where, as a team, we have come up with really good ideas, and then we've taken the team to the supervisor of the organization, and then the supervisor has not necessarily taken credit for the idea, but not necessarily, just sort of like, yeah, this is what we came up with, presenting the idea as, maybe mostly theirs, but even though it was, the team's idea, or maybe it was even just one person on that team that had the great idea, but because it came from the team, it becomes the team's idea, and then it becomes the company's idea. And then when the CEO, I'm not saying this has happened to me, but but it's easy to see how then the CEO is like, yes, this is how it's done at this company, and because they're at the top, they are known for that idea, whether or not they came up with it.
Yeah, and I think that's part of human nature, is to want to kind of either ride on the shoulders of others' greatness and take a little credit for it, or to just completely take ownership of it. And you kind of have to think of, what are so many of the ideas that we don't even know who to attribute them to? I mean, Nike, they've spent probably hundreds of millions on their idea of just do it, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's heard that slogan. Do you know the name of the person who came up with it?
No.
I don't. You think of a movie like Pixar puts out all these wonderful movies that are just so funny and creative, just wildly creative creations that they put out, and stamp the name Pixar on it, right? Well, right. There's probably hundreds, thousands of people who are contributing a bunch of these little bits of genius into this one final work that Pixar gets the name. And I don't imagine any of them are really spending their lives trying to get credit for, oh, that was my idea.
Right. They might or even a director, Steven Spielberg. Everybody knows who Steven Spielberg is. He's the great director. Right. And but every idea in E.T. wasn't necessarily his idea. Like I don't think he, some another, whether it's a book or a story or whatever, he's the one who brought it, was in charge of bringing it forward and, had sort of the oversight of it, but that's certainly, but he's the one that gets all the credit.
Right. Yeah. Well, like Star Trek, that's one of my favorite shows and franchises. And the original was recognized by one of my favorite actresses, Lucy Arnaz, right? At the time, mm-hmm. Lucille Ball. She was one of my favorite actresses as a child, comedians. And, I can't remember the name of their production company, but their production company, Desilu, thank you, mm-hmm. are the ones who did Star Trek. And it's like, I never knew that. I never knew that until somebody pointed out to me. Anyway.
I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and I didn't know that.
Yeah, and isn't Star Trek great?
It is. Yes, it is. That is, now we're talking about something that's great.
Well, actually, it's a fun one to bring up too, because it's, hundreds of millions of people are probably just great, huge fans of it. And when you dig into the dirt of it, there's a lot of dirt around that show. And Gene Roddenberry, he's kind of a controversial character. And I was like, wow, he did some bad things. And is he a great person, having produced this great idea and lots of great ideas? And I just have to say, yeah, life is messy, life is dirty. And I think in the end, we kind of have to put some focus on the greatness. And I don't know.
Yeah, I struggle with that with people. That kind of goes it sort of brings us around to what we were talking about a little bit ago, which is the people falling from their pedestals, and the greatness. Does that tarnish their greatness when you find out that there's an aspect about a person that's not great? I struggle with this all the time. When somebody that I really respected, I find out that they have said or done racist things, or slurs against a particular community, or whatever it might be, that I feel is not something that doesn't represent greatness, and I struggle with does that take away from what they did? Is what they did still great, even though it turns out that they're not as great as we thought they were?
Yeah. Would you mind sharing a very specific example that I know you have?
Sure. Well, and I don't want to, I just, because, everybody is, there's, it's right now, it's actually, it's hard to talk about this kind of stuff right now because the world is so, is so polarized. But John Muir, the, the naturalist, he, credited for inspiring national parks and the founder of the Sierra Club and so forth. For a long time, I held him in very, very high esteem. And it's been recently that it's come to my attention that he actually had, he spoke, he spoke in a derogatory way about multiple cultures and races, and the conservation community has, as largely they are saying, like, we can find people to revere and appreciate and be inspired by who don't say those things or who didn't say those things. And I think that is absolutely true. And there are lots of examples of people who didn't. But does that change the great things that he has done?
Do you want my thoughts, or do you want to share some thoughts first?
No, I want your thoughts, because because I struggle with it. I struggle with, are we judging people? Are we judging people from our standards and what we're supposed? Here we are, in 2020. We should have a more enlightened perspective than somebody in 1880. If we didn't, maybe, John Muir, maybe our problem is that we look at great people and we think of them then as not so great because because they're not meeting our 2020 standard. And so, but maybe we then need to adjust our opinion of greatness. A modern example is J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, who we were talking about Harry Potter before we started. That, I have heard that she is, that she doesn't understand the many aspects of the GLBT community and has said disparaging things about it. So especially trans people in general, or specifically trans people, is what I should say. So, does that make her and her books less great?
So I have tons of thoughts about this whole topic. And my first thought is to withhold judgment. And I think that's the most important thing with just about any person, with any situation, is to withhold judgment, because for starters, we never know the full story. Almost never. Almost never. Just to qualify that a little bit, it's like we may hear something, oh, that person's so great. But then we hear something else, is like, oh, they're a monster. It's like, well, which are they? Are they great or are they a monster? Well, we don't know, because we don't know the full story. You shared this with me about John Muir, and I've grown over time. The more I hear about him and what he's accomplished and what he did with his life, and the awareness that he raised with loving nature and reconnecting with nature the way I believe we're supposed to, is great. Now, saying racist, racially disparaging things, that's not great. And so to withhold judgment, because I don't know the context around the racial things that he said. And so that kind of brings me to the next thing is, first I'm going to withhold judgment because I don't know the full story. And I'm going to actually just keep my mind and my heart open to some more curiosity to understand more about the story, because that's what people are. First of all, people are human. Mm-hmm. And humans have greatness and they have the opposite within them. And the whole human condition, the whole human experience is this. Sometimes it's a battle, sometimes it's a journey, sometimes it's an exploration of the differences between those greatnesses and, you know, the evils that are within every single person. So anytime I hear somebody's done something bad, I'm like, oh, they're human. You know, I was crestfallen with Barbara Streisand, but that started me as a child, understanding that everybody has that greatness and that the light and the dark within them. And that's another thing about J.K. Rowling, is that, you know, she has a very famous and beloved statement about, you know, from Dumbledore, telling us everybody has light and dark, good and evil in them. And what matters is what we do with it. Sometimes we're going to act from our place of greatness and light. Sometimes we're going to act from our place of fear and evil. And hopefully we're going to try to do more good. You know, say John Muir, for instance, he may have grown up in a racist family. Well, chances are, if you grow up in a racist family or a racist community, you are going to become a racist. And so if you take somebody who's just an amazing, great, wonderful person and you have them born in a racist situation, well, it might be real tough for them to wake up to the part of themselves that realizes, you know, that racism is bull. That's
Mm-hmm.
right. Racism stems from fear and evil, period. It might take them time to get there. And perhaps part of his story is that connecting with nature helped him realize that all of us come from the same human family. All of us are deserving of the same love, the same kindness as anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was getting there. I don't know. So I just reserve judgment and I say, hey, everyone's human. And I'm going to leave. This is my last thought about this, is that I think that if I believe, and I've tested it and found it to be very true, that if you appeal to the greatness in people, they are more likely to show it to you. And so if you can let God or the universe be the judge, and if you can just hold your own integrity and say, hey, you know what? I don't know everything. So I'm just going to do my best in the face of whatever I do know, and leave some room open for whatever the rest that I don't know, and just do my best. I think that's the best that we can do. You know, I think it's normal to feel disappointed. You know, J.K. Rowling, I haven't heard anything about her maybe lack of tolerance or whatever it is you're describing about her relationship to trans community. But to me, I think, boy, she's experiencing some of the light and the dark that she talked about in her own books.
Yeah, when you were talking about that, I was thinking that too.
And so for me, I'm not going to judge her, but I would absolutely appeal to the greatness with her and say, hey, you know, could you wake up a little bit about that? Or maybe a lot. I don't know how much, because I don't know the story. But I would hope that she wakes up to that and says, hey, people are people. Everyone is deserving of the same love and kindness and compassion as everyone else. And that she could admit that she doesn't know their full story. I'll admit that I don't know the full story of trans. I won't pretend to get it necessarily. I do on some level, being a gay man and being human in general, because I think a lot of our experiences, just the way that we feel about them, is very shared. And, you know, I do try to understand it, you know, for the trans community, I stay open and I listen. Say, you know, you tell me, because I won't pretend to be, you know, I won't pretend to understand. I can try to understand on a basic human level of, we're all struggling. We all have a story and we're all struggling together. Hopefully I understand on that level, but you tell me your story. You tell me about it and I will try to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, hey, John Muir, you're being a racist. I'm going to try and appeal to the good in you and say, hey, you know what? Maybe you don't understand everything. Maybe you've got some bad programming going on in your head, came from a, you know, fearful place. So I'm going to appeal to goodness in you and hope that you'll wake up to that, you know?
So you're talking about appealing to the goodness in a person.
Mm-hmm.
How do you appeal to the greatness in a person?
Well, for those of you listening, this was not a pre-bidden question, but the thing that did keep popping up for me as I was thinking about, well, what would I say about greatness is that, and it's not mind-blowing. It's very simple, but I think the most powerful and most wonderful truths in all of life are the simplest ones. But what kept on coming up for me is that I think the goodness in people is the greatness. And that's it. So if we can act from a place of goodness within ourselves, we're unlocking our own greatness. If we can appeal to the goodness in others, we're helping them unlock their greatness. Sorry, that's probably a boring answer to your
Not boring.
question,
No,
but
it's
that's
perfect.
it.
No, that's what I wanted to know. It's perfect. That's great. Or as they would say in Scotland, that's great.
Okay, you're going Scottish, and I was going with Tony the Tiger.
Great.
Maybe we could do both. Great. Well, what other thoughts about greatness do you have?
I don't know. I think I feel pretty great about it.
Good.
What about you?
Great. I feel the same. I actually kind of thought the last thing I wanted to say for my thoughts on it was that if you appeal to the greatness in others, that they're more likely to show it to you. And that
Yes.
if you just pair that with what your question, appeal to the goodness in people, and they're more likely to show it to you. And if everyone in the world was doing a little bit more good, that would be a great world.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it takes much. That's my biggest thing, is I don't think it takes much. Like your comment about little kindnesses add up to greatness. That's it. That's it right there. That's all it takes, is like, if you want to be great, you want to have a great life, go be kind. Do it as many times as you can remember to throughout the day. Small, big kindnesses, tiny little kindnesses that nobody ever sees. It matters.
Yeah, I agree. And one of my final thoughts, I think, on this is, and it relates to that, is telling people, like you used the grocery store as an example. But right now, teachers have it really hard right now, because they're trying to manage the situation of, how do they reach students through these multiple platforms, and many of them have their own kids at home, and there's just it's really hard to be a teacher, and I just think that telling people what you're doing is really great is so, that I think that also matters. It's beyond, it's making sure that people know that they are appreciated, and like you said, that that will help. It helps everybody grow in the right direction. So teachers, this is your shout out. You are doing great, and thank you for all you do.
And we'll leave it at that. That was wonderful. That's fantastic.
All right. Well, thanks, PJ. This was great. Let's do it again soon.
Thank you, Caroline, and everybody. HopeSpringStudios.com. Go get your great art. It's wonderful, bright, colorful, beautiful art done by Caroline. And thehappierzone.com. Come enter the zone and be happier. Absolutely. I'm working on catchphrases, but that's the gist. So thanks for listening. Hope you listen again. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you. Bye.